Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy evening to be here for my research presentation. I greatly appreciate it. I hope that after you leave here, you know more about snacking, impulsivity, and planned behavior. You already have the background on myself, so let me just go ahead and launch into why I chose to do this research. Well, first, I did my dissertation in Lubbock, Texas. There's a huge Hispanic community there. But beyond that, just looking at, I like to look at underserved communities and how we can create better health messages for them and provide better service, healthcare, and all that to underserved communities. So in my research, I really focused on West Texas Hispanics, again, because I was in West Texas and there's a huge population. And I'll talk more within the paper itself about why specifically West Texas Hispanics. So to snack or not to snack, I hope this doesn't make anybody hungry. If it does, you can go snack after this. Or it might change your mind, actually. You may want not to snack. So the purpose of this study was to look at the role trait impulsivity. So that's a personality trait, right? Impulsivity. How many of us, have thought about going on some sort of diet? Every single time, I'm not going to eat all these unhealthy snacks when I see them at school, at work. You thought in your head, you've had planned out, I'm not eating unhealthy snacks. But as soon as you walk into class, maybe the professor bought a box of cookies, or you go to work, you're having a potluck, the first thing you go for, the cookies, the donuts, right? You start snacking in between meals. You had breakfast, and maybe you're going to have lunch. But what happens? Why did you sit at home, plan all of these things, right? In your mind, you're going to lose your 20 pounds by Thanksgiving, and you're really motivated. Why is it when you see that box of cookies or those donuts or whatever it is, all reasoning goes out the window? You just beeline for the snacks. May it be that you're just impulsive in nature, right? Cookies look delicious, and they fulfill a certain your taste buds get all excited, like, ooh, sweet, and get the sugar high and everything else. So this is what my research looked at. We have so many reasoned action theories out there, right? And one of them is the theory of planned behavior, which is a theory that guided my research. In the theory of planned behavior, the assumption is that most of our behavior is reasoned in terms of volitional behavior, which is things that you have control over, right? So like dieting, exercising, putting on a seatbelt, all of that is reasoned. You've thought about it. By the time you go to the gym, you've decided that I want to go to the gym, I want to be fit, for whatever reasons. So why is it when you're about to go to the gym, your friend calls you, hey, do you want to go have some wings? Or hey, do you want to come over and watch TV? All their reasoning is out the window, or your planning is out the window. Is it because you're impulsive? And so there's been a call in research to maybe look at how reasoned behavior and impulsivity, maybe they should work together, right? Instead of looking at it separately, like, okay, all behavior is reasoned. Impulsivity and reasoning and thinking about something, maybe those should be in one theory, in one model. And so this is what my paper did. Took the trait impulsivity, the trait of impulsivity, and tried to combine it with reasoned action so that we can better predict behavior, right? Because we don't always reason out things, even though when we reason, sometimes our impulsivity takes over. And I want to advance theory within the field of mass communications. In public relations, even mass communication, we still have a long way to go in terms of having our own theories and making them stronger and seeing how we can infuse PR strategies or PR tactics into reaching our publics. And as you all know, I always stress, know your public. How do you know your public? You do research, right? So that you know what type of messages to use. The type of messages that I would have for my West Texas Hispanic audience would be quite different for the type of messages that I would have for Hispanics in California, even in California, Northern California, Southern California. So you can't just take people and think, okay, because you're this must appeal to you. So henceforth, you have to do research. And so this is, again, part of my research, segmenting individuals and seeing what exactly speaks to them. There's also, with the theory of planned behavior, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next few slides, one of its criticisms is that it's very good at predicting intention. But intention alone is not good enough, right? I can predict your intention, but then there's that intention behavior gap. We always intend, right? Isn't there that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? We always have good intentions to do things, but what's really important is the doing. And so this theory is very good at predicting intention, but not so good at predicting actual behavior. And so what my research is also trying to do is trying to find those gaps between that intention and behavior. What can we do to better improve and close that gap within the theory of planned behavior? So, I know this is a lot, but it was important that I put it there. Why Hispanics and health, right? If you look at recent census data, Hispanic Americans are a growing minority within the country. I think here it's saying, there's some stat here about at some point, Hispanic Americans will be over 50% of the United States population. In the next 35 years, Hispanics are projected to be between 24 and 30% of the United States population. Those are huge implications in terms of health messages, health care, and all these things, right? And research has shown that most Hispanic diet, there's a lot of eating fried food, sweets, and few fresh fruits and vegetables. I mean, I won't even talk about just Hispanic Americans. I know in my own life, this is probably true as well, right? But this, I'm just using this in the sample that I used. And so the prevalence of obesity and overweight, it's quite prevalent in Mexican Americans. And so we have to relook at from the parents to the children, right? Children eat what their parents give them and what their parents are eating, and they model that behavior, right? Or even if you have, little sisters, nephews, whatever you're doing, they will end up probably doing the same thing. And so it's important that we try to find what the root cause and why it's filtering down to the children, and trying to increase healthy eating, right? So that we can also increase all these other diseases that come with it. And again, it's something we can find in probably in all sort of backgrounds and ethnicities. But again, my research specifically focused on West Texas Hispanics. Why did I choose snacking for something for my study? Because snacking it's something that we all do, and it's more easier to access snacks than it is for us to sit down and have. Who today sat down, made a nice healthy breakfast, and ate that today? Right? But it's so much easier, right? If you don't eat breakfast, it looks like most of us didn't eat breakfast. But there's lots of vending machines in our buildings, right? Or someone may just come like, hey, want some candy? I know every time I go to our department, I'm always taking a piece of candy. That's snacking right there, right? And I'm just like, ooh, candy, I'm hungry. Take a piece of candy, and I'm off every single day without fail. Anytime I'm in that office, I leave with a Tootsie Pop or whatever it is, whatever they're called, right? And so snacking has been associated with weight gain. And it leads to diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and just all sorts of nutrition-related disorders. And so that's why I picked on snacking to look at. And it's something that, can really throw you off if you're not snacking properly when it comes to dieting. And it's so much easier to snack than it is to actually sit down and have a decent meal. Even lunch. Who had lunch today? Like a good, decent lunch. Callum, you had breakfast, lunch, everything. Good for you. Right? So when I'm talking about snacking, the definition of my snacking, when I talk about snacking in the rest of this presentation, snacking is foods that you eat between the main meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, so that's what I mean by snacking. So if you eat a burger and fries, that's not for your lunch. That's not snacking. That's actually your dinner. But if you eat some fries between lunch and dinner, that's the snacking part, all right? So any of those little things that you do between the main meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner is what I define snacking as. So this is the fun theory of planned behavior. So the way this is laid out, hopefully you can all see it in the back, is that intention is really ruled by attitude, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. You're like, huh? Okay. What do those words mean? So attitude is just your evaluation. So when it comes to snacking, do you feel that if you avoid high-calorie snacks, you will lose weight, right? Or your life will be healthier? That's your evaluation. If you believe that, yes, your life will be better, your health will be better, then it increases your intention to avoid those high-calorie snacks. Subjective norm just means the people around you. So who is most influential in your life when it comes to making decisions? Do you think your family, your friends, your significant other, do they think you're avoiding high-calorie snacks is good for you? And not only do they think that, but do you respect their opinion, right? And would you want to comply with those opinions? And if the answer is yes, again, that predicts intention. And of course, the last one, perceived behavioral control, is just how much power do you think you have to overcome snacking? How much power do you think you have to avoid that snacking? And actually, perceived behavioral control is a direct predictor of behavior. So if you think, I can do this, I have the power to avoid snacking, that sometimes overrides your attitude about it. It overrides your subjective norms, and you can directly predict behavior. But for the most part, attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control, they all come together to predict intention. The higher any of those things are, the higher your intention. So if your family, your significant other, your friends think avoiding high-calorie snacks is a good thing, and if you respect their opinions, if you've analyzed it saying, okay, high-calorie snacking is if I quit eating high-calorie snacks, I'm going to achieve my weight goals. And if you have in your mind, I can overcome any barrier that may be presented to me, then your intention is high, right? If your intention is high, you would think that your behavior will be high as well, right? Not quite. This is where the gap is. People all have good intentions. So when we do this research, most theory upon behavior research stops at intention and never really goes into behavior to follow up on people to see what their behavior was. And so I took that extra step and actually followed up with these people and asked them, so since the last time we talked, did you snack? What happened? And all these things. Okay. So this is the theory of planned behavior. And so what I'm proposing is, actually, let me go back, sorry. What I'm proposing is adding a fourth variable of impulsivity. And I'll show you a different diagram that kind of puts everything into perspective. So impulsivity, why I talked about adding impulsivity as a fourth predictor of intention, of behavior, right? Because I feel that impulsivity is a variable that can help us explain this, right here, intention behavior gap, right? So I'm saying the more impulsive you are, the less intention even though you intend to to not snack, if you're more impulsive, you're going to do it anyway, and vice versa. So with impulsivity, it's a multi-dimensional construct. It's broken down into four, right? So it has urgency. If you're an impulsive individual, these are the things that speak to you. Urgency, lack of premeditation, right? You just kind of do things without thinking and think later. Act first and think later when you're an impulsive. Urgency, you want that instant gratification. And lack of perseverance, right? You can't stay focused on one thing. You kind of, jumping all over the place. And sensation seeking, inclined to seek out exciting or dangerous things. So you notice people who like, the X Games. Usually people who are involved in all of that tend to be more impulsive individuals because all of these things, it excites them. It's something, spinning up in the air and falling down. It's like, this is exciting. and sensation seeking. And so this is what impulsivity is. And so I'm trying to use that as a fourth predictor of intention, saying not everything we do is all well thought out. So today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to, do this. Sometimes we just act on a whim, right? We've all made those impulsive decisions, but sometimes it's a personality trait that can really affect and override all your reasoned action. Hopefully you can all see it in the back there. So my first prediction, my first hypothesis, right, is as trait impulsivity increases, intention to avoid high-calorie snacks will go down. So maybe you can look at the bigger screen, but I'm putting trait impulsivity right here with the same as attitude, subjective norm, and the perceived behavior control, and saying impulsivity, a non-reasoned variable, also affects your intention, but also affects behavior. Okay, so that was my first hypothesis. The second hypothesis was that trait impulsivity, right, this affects this behavior between intention and behavior. It's going to either increase or decrease, weaken or strengthen that relationship between intention and behavior. So the more impulsive you are, for low trait impulsivity, behavior intention will be significantly stronger than for high trait impulsivity. So if you have low impulsive, if you're just not really a very impulsive person, right, you're more likely to follow through with the behavior compared if you're a person who's high in impulsivity, then you're going to snack anyway. Even though you had intention not to, you told me, oh no, I'm not going to snack in the next 2 weeks. And then the next thing you walk out the door, someone offers you a Twinkie, you're like, oh. You go ahead and eat it, right? So this was the prediction. Again, because remember, I'm trying to close that intention-behavior gap. That is the problem with the theory. So with theory of planned behavior, again, we always talk about knowing your audience, right? Segmenting them. What do they think? With the theory of planned behavior, what's nice about this theory at times is that you have to elicit people's salient, modal salient beliefs, meaning that you have to find out what exactly speaks to those people. We don't all have the same attitudes about life. We don't all have the same, not the same people influence our lives or influence what we do. So this is the first part of the study. You don't have to use a lot of people for this first part of the study. Actually, I used more than the research calls for, more than the theory calls for. I think the theory says talk to 10 people initially. Right, but I had to go above and beyond, so I talked to 34. And so what I was trying to do with this, I talked to 34 Hispanic adults, open-ended questions, just asking them, so if you avoid high-calorie snacks, what do you think the benefits of that would be? Right, and they told me, who in your life is whose opinions in your life do you think is most important? They told me, right? Then I asked them for perceived behavior control. What barriers do you think you can face, or what things would stop you from following a low-fat diet, or what things would stop you from avoiding high-calorie snacks? And they told me. So based off of those results is what I used to create the next part of the study. Because I can't take results from another study and use that. It just doesn't work, because each public, okay, remember when we talk about publics and stuff, and each audience, they have different motivations. West Texas Hispanics may have different motivations from Hispanics in New York, Hispanics in California. So for each time you use this theory, you have to do this initial study. And of course, I did a content analysis where I analyzed the different responses to come up with the top responses that I received. So hopefully you guys can see. Oh, that's really tiny. But I'll tell you what it says. So on behavioral outcome, the most frequent answer was, if I avoid high-calorie snacks, I believe that I'll have a healthy lifestyle. And the next one was weight loss. Those are the most frequent answers. And the next one, normative reference. So who are the people who are important to your life? Who, if they told you, hey, you need to avoid high-calorie snacks, or you need to work out, who is most influential and who would you listen to? So family, right? Significant other. And then parents and friends came in. When I say family, we're talking about uncles, aunts, not because parents are, I mean, they're still family, but as you can see, they have a different column on their own. So family was your immediate family, your, you know, uncles, aunts, and all sorts. And then control factors. What are the things that would make you feel empowered to avoid high-calorie snacks? Supplemental activity. So if I could, you know, if I could exercise, or if I could do this, if I could do that, that would keep me motivated. And of course, lack of healthy snacks were also barriers. So we talk about the vending machines around the building, right? So accessible. If you have $1 and you're hungry, and you're going to try seeking out the next apple, you're just going to see those Doritos and speaking to you, eat me, you know, right? You eat those. Think about when you go, I think today I talked about Costco, when they have the samples. You know, in your mind, I'm just like, I'm trying to be healthy, but those samples are there, and what do? You have lunch at Costco. You've eaten like 500 different snacks. But that's the lack of the healthy snacks, because all these things, if people had healthy options available to them, people claim that they would eat. But let me tell you a quick story about when I was at McDonald's. I was talking about McDonald's, but one time they had, you know, when you work in an office setting, people always bring different things. So one time someone brought this big cheesecake that they'd shipped from New York. It was so good. And that thing was gone within hours. And then there's another day, there were cookies and this, gone. Then one day, I don't know whose bright idea this was, there was a fruit tray, sitting in the same place where this cheesecake and everything was. Nobody touched it. Nobody touched the fruit tray. It was there all day. And so we say, yeah, if we had healthier options, if somebody gives me, you know, somebody brought fruits and vegetables, that would encourage me to avoid high-calorie snacks. Would it really? Because nobody touched those fruits and vegetables. But put cookies, cheesecake, gone. I mean, I was guilty of the same thing. I'm like, my gosh, who would bring fruits and vegetables? I mean, who wants to do that, you know? But I was all over that cheesecake. And so we say, well, you know, if I'm provided with better options, I would eat healthy, but would we really? But that's part of it, trying to find out, are people actually telling the truth, or are we giving socially desirable answers, right? Because maybe people tend to say things that sound good and make them look good because they don't want to look bad in front of other people. Oh. That says study 2, testing the influence of impulsivity on intention and behavior. So the second phase of the study was taking all those results and creating a questionnaire, right? And this questionnaire I gave out to 220 participants. The sample had 120 females, 100 males, so it was a good mix. And the average age was, I guess, 41 years old. I recruited my participants from the summer church festivals called Jamaikas. Has anybody ever heard of a Jamaica? Yes? Yes? Okay, I thought it was like just a West Texas thing, but you've been to one? Yeah. Have you attended a Jamaica before? Oh, no, I thought you wanted to drink. Oh, no. No, I'm talking, it's a festival. It's a church festival. Oh, okay. No, I'm talking about the festival. They're called Jamaikas. And I think maybe they may just be special to West Texas. I'm not sure, because I've never heard of them anywhere else. Anyway, mostly put up by Catholic churches during the summer. So imagine being out in the height of summer in Texas collecting data. I think that was the hardest part of this whole research process, was just, it's hot. And West Texas is even hotter, right? But got to do what you got to do. And so I recruited my participants from these church festivals. It was a self-administered paper and pencil, so just give them the survey and then they would answer it on their own. At the first time for the survey, I just asked theory of planned behavior questions and impulsivity, and I'll show you some examples of what the questions look like. And then, you know, I gave you a T-shirt, kind of give you a debriefing session, and people asked questions, whatever questions that they had. And then, of course, I also asked them at that point if it was okay for me to contact them in 2 weeks. So no, with a theory of planned behavior, it normally stops there at time 1, where you just ask questions and then you just get the intention. But I was also trying to predict behavior, just taking it that one step further. And so I would ask the people, hey, can I contact you in 2 weeks to ask you a couple of questions? For the most part, everybody was pretty nice about it. They're like, yeah, sure, here's my phone number. But also because I was offering 2 iPads. There was a drawing for 2 iPads. So they're like, oh, yes, here's my number. Call me in 2 weeks. I'll answer your questions, right? And so that's what happened with that first part. So some examples of some of the questions. So theory planned behavior questions. So remember we talk about intention, predicting intention. So this is one of the questions. I intend to avoid eating high-calorie snacks between the main meals of breakfast, lunch, dinner over the next 2 weeks, right? The answers range from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Same thing when we talk about normative, subjective norms. My spouse, e.g. husband, wife, or partner, e.g. boyfriend, girlfriend, would want me to avoid high-calorie snacks between main meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then perceived behavior control type questions would say something as, it is mostly up to me whether or not I avoid eating high-calorie snacks. So those are the different types of questions. Of course, the whole survey ended up being about 47 questions long, but for each category, you ask about 4 to 5 questions, so you kind of get a good sense of what the person is asking, wanting to know. And then for impulsivity questions, each of these questions is an example of each dimension. Remember, I talked about urgency, lack of premeditation, lack of perseverance, and all sorts. So these are examples of the type of questions I asked for the impulsivity. When I'm upset, I often act without thinking. Strongly disagree to strongly agree. I like to stop and think things over before I do them. I generally seek new and exciting experience and sensations, and so forth and so forth. And so these are the questions that I asked individuals to get a sense of whether A, if they're high trait impulsivity, low trait impulsivity, and try to get their intentions when it comes to snacking. So I already talked about how I recruited my participants for the study. It was all done July, August 2012, hottest time of the year. That's all I remember, the heat. Just like, it's so hot. Why is it so hot? But all of my respondents were from West Texas, so I'd filter questions to make sure, because sometimes people come in from different parts of Texas or different parts of the country. I just wanted to know about West Texas Hispanics. And so, of course, I had those filter questions to make sure. I think initially I had 234 respondents, but I had to disqualify 15 of them for various reasons, because they were not Hispanic or because they were not from West Texas, right? And in that initial time 1, you got a T-shirt and sent you on your way. Then if I got to call you back, then you were put in the drawing for an iPad. And so out of the 130 people that said, yeah, you can call me back, of course, I only managed to reach 60 of them, because people were screening my calls and others were, like, oh, I'm busy, or whatever it was. But that's fine. So I got 60 respondents who I reached to complete the follow-up survey to find out, their snacking habits between the first time and the first time I asked them questions and second time. And that was a 2-week period, because I was interested in the past 2 weeks. And again, 2 weeks is a good time frame to ask respondents, because beyond that, we talk about people forget. I mean, even 2 weeks is hard enough to remember. I barely remember what I ate yesterday. And you're asking me to remember the snacks that I ate the past 2 weeks. But 2 weeks is a good benchmark to cut it off. And most people kind of remembered. And when I talk about snacks, the things I was asking them about: cake, cookies, and fried food, right? That's what we included to give them a good definition of what we mean by snacks. And so that's what they went by. So results, the first hypothesis, of course, as predicted, right? The more impulsive you are, the less impulsive you are, the more intention you have to, the more you follow through with, the less intention you have to snack on high calories, to snack on high calorie food. And this has been shown in, I think, 2 other studies have tried to put impulsivity and the theory of planned behavior. So my study would be the third one, and this is consistent with what they found. Although adding this impulsivity trait to my theory didn't exactly increase the predictability of the theory itself by that much. I think it just increased it by 1%, which is, I mean, 1% in research, it's still pretty decent. It was significant. It wasn't that high, but, So I kind of take these results with a pinch of salt. I'm not going to go around singing like, yeah, groundbreaking, but it's a step in the right direction. At least it shows, yes, impulsivity is a good variable to add to that theory if need be. Right? So as impulsivity increases, intention to avoid high-calorie snacks increases, which it seems like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? But without trait impulsivity, the most things that predicted intention to avoid high-calorie snacks were subjective norm, which, friends and family, and perceived behavior control. And I'll talk about that in the discussion part, why that's important and why that's a revealing result in its own. And for H2, impulsivity was going to moderate, meaning it was going to decrease, weaken or strengthen that relationship between intention and behavior. And I really thought it was, but it didn't. So this result was actually, my hypothesis was not supported for this prediction. So impulsivity did not make, if I had intention to avoid high-calorie snacks, whether it was low impulsivity or high impulsivity, that did not really affect my decision to go ahead and eat avoid those snacks, avoid those snacks or eat them. I'm sorry this is cut off. When I tested it before on a different computer, it was fine. And then on this computer, it's cut off. So I think maybe the settings might be slightly different. Was there a difference between high and low impulsives? Yes, right? So people, of course, who were low and impulsive had better intentions to avoid snacking, and then people who are more impulsive always kind of throw their intentions out the window, and that was significant. So the difference does exist. Okay. And really, those were like the main findings. So on average, respondents with low trait impulsivity had higher intentions to avoid high-calorie snacks than those with low trait impulsivity. Again, I think this is something that I've seen in most of this research, and I was glad that I could provide more support for that, right? Because that's what we like to do in research, either we're proving or disproving something. So, as a point of discussion, the results, what I can say about going back to how perceived behavior control and subjective norms, how they were good predictors of avoiding high-calorie snacks. What that means is that when we create mass media campaigns or health campaigns, we should focus really on people's control, saying, yes, you have the strength to do this, you have the ability to do that, you have what it takes to avoid high-calorie snacks, because we've shown that perceived behavior control was the one that was a good predictor. Subjective norms, so, I think you guys may have, there's sometimes when commercials, they talk about, do it for your family, right? Your father thinks it's important. I think mostly, especially those the breast cancer screening commercials, they like to really talk about family. Why? Because research, even my research has shown that subjective norms, which are the people that are important to you, think that it's good and important for you to do that, right? So that's how you start targeting the different messages, So if family is important, which has shown that family and friends, what their opinions are important to the whole process. And so, but then, of course, maybe we don't want to look too much in the trait impulsivity between the intention and behavior, because we didn't show that to be significant. What does this mean for theory, right? Every time you do research, you want to add to the theory, right? You want to make that theory better, augment that theory. So this particular research really added support to the idea of adding non-reasoned variables to reasoned frameworks. So the theory of planned behavior plus impulsivity is actually a stronger theory than the theory of planned behavior on its own, right? So depending, again, on the behavior, especially avoiding snacking, this would be a good thing to add to the theory of planned behavior, just to help improve its predictive utility. And there are other non-reasoned frameworks out there that we could research and add this to. But for the theory of planned behavior, we're good to go. For practice, as I mentioned before, just creating more targeted campaigns, more targeted health campaigns. And really, if it's for people who are high in impulsivity, we know that they have, their intentions decrease, right? So how can we create health messages about better dieting and all sorts of things and target their impulsivity and create messages that will help keep those intentions intact and not let them throw them out the window as soon as they see a delicious looking cupcake, right? Or they go to Subway, they get a healthy sandwich, but right at the counter, they have this whole case of cookies. It's like $3 for $1. Like, what? How can I pass up on this great deal? And so throws out your whole, sub-delight thing that you got for 200 calories. You've added a good 600 calories on top. So what messages can we create that will let you see those cookies, but remind you, okay, control your impulses? How can we train you to do that? And so some of the things that we can suggest from this research is that there's this construct called implementation intentions, where you try to form it in someone's head, right? And say, okay, once you're presented with the 3 cookies for $1 at Subway, cement that in someone's head, like, this is what you need to do, right? You just need to pay for your food. You don't need those calories, and walk out. Just remember that, right? So implementation intentions, so where you have people make these mental connections in their head by talking to them, right? Training is really what it comes down to. And so, this is why most times people have trainers, right? Because that trainer is going to instill these things in your head rather than trying to work alone. And if you're trying to achieve something, maybe get a trainer. But that's why usually people with trainers or people with coaches are successful at what they do, because they help make these mental connections and give them tips on what to do when in the face of temptation, right? You're going to walk into the office at work and you'll see donuts and coffee. You need to have a plan, especially if you know that you're impulsive. You need to have a plan to know what are you going to do when you see those donuts and coffee, right? I think there's a commercial on TV that maybe touches on this, the yogurt commercials. Have you guys seen those? I always talk about I'm the only one who seems to watch TV in my classes. Because I always have these examples of commercials, and it's like everyone looks at me like, what are you talking about? But the Yoplait commercials, where it's usually women and they're faced with like choice between cookies and Yoplait, right? Yeah. And then they end up choosing the Yoplait, and then the cookies are all sad and stuff. But stuff like that, coaching people that, okay, when you're in the face of temptation, you want to do this because at the end of the day, this is better for you, right? And that has been shown that works in most cases. So some of the limitations of the study is that, of course, I didn't use a probability sample, meaning that I can't do what? Generalize my results. Thank you. I can't generalize my results back to the population. However, I can generalize them to my sample, and I can release, but I can generalize them back to my West Texas sample and say, within this sample, this is what they think. So, of course, future research should really think about getting a more a random sample. Just in that setting, I just couldn't get a random sample because I had to go to very specific places to get my sample, i.e. the Jamaicas, right? So for the purpose of my study, I had to do that. And again, then the follow-up response was really low. 27%. So out of the 220 participants, I only got 60 people to follow up with to find out if they would actually eat those snacks, what they snacked on. I already talked about these implementation intentions, right? Requiring people to set out explicitly what they do. So write it down. And I think this is something we do in everyday life, right? If you want to achieve something, write it down, create a plan, and you're more likely to follow through if you have a plan set out and what you want to do, especially for people who are high in impulsivity. If they have a plan and it's all set out, then if in the face of whatever, they can follow through with that plan. Just to end the results, and so we can get into a little bit of discussion. This, again, I said, is one of the very few studies to look at impulsivity and theory of planned behavior, again, because researchers in this field have really been calling for this type of research, because we've realized that we look at impulsivity and reason action separately, but maybe these are things that should be looked at together, because sometimes they work in tandem. As people, you're not just completely reasonable and think everything is well thought out. I mean, if you do that, good for you. Like, if you think about everything that you do and you have certain intentions, that's wonderful. And again, no one is that extreme that everything they do is just impulsive, right? Just everything is just on a whim. So at some point, all of this works together. Right? It all works in tandem. So at what point does one override the other? And so some of the remarks from the participants that I talked to when I called them to follow up on the study, I got some really good feedback. You know, some people were like, well, you know, after I took your questionnaire, I just realized that I eat a lot of junk, and I actually haven't been snacking as much since we talked. And it makes me feel good just because it wasn't even a campaign. But already people were noticing that, oh my gosh, I eat a lot of junk. Or in some cases, on the follow-up, some people ate more snacks than they were eating before. But I guess because it was on their mind. So it's like, okay, that was not my intention. I didn't mean for you to go binge snack or anything. But for the most part, a lot of people were just thinking about their health. And they're like, you know what, yes, I've been trying to avoid snacks, but it's so difficult because, you know, I'm busy. A lot of the things were, I'm busy. You know, I don't have time to cook and all these things. And it's just easier for me to, you know, stop by and grab a bag of chips and all these things. So what can we do as people who create all these campaigns? What can we do to ease people's lives or people's minds, or just give them tools, right, to overcome this, oh, I'm busy, oh, I don't have the money to buy healthy snacks? Because you can still eat healthy even though you don't have a lot of money, right? You just need to know how, and people just don't know that. You know, what to do when you're presented with unhealthy snacks at potlucks. When I was I worked a little bit at Capital One Auto Finance, and let me tell you, every single week there was some sort of food that was there. If it was pizza, if it was cake, there was just no way. It's just unavoidable, right? So what do you do when you're in a situation like that? No matter how controlled you are, at some point you're going to give in, right? So really you will, because it was every day. There was just always something. I think I gained like 30 pounds while I was there. Seriously, it was that bad. But we're creating these environments where maybe we're cornering people into giving into eating things, right? And so I don't know if anybody lives in the dorms. We always have like pizza parties or this, that, right? Do you ever have like fruit tray party? No. Like, who wants that, right? And so, but what happens when you're faced with that? And snacking, you can't completely avoid snacking, right? I mean, we got to snack now and again. But then how do you do it in a better way that's going to help you achieve your goals and it's going to keep us healthier? And so we need to create campaigns that allow for that and tell people, hey, it's okay to snack, but maybe in moderation. And this is what you need to do to overcome when you're faced with temptation and so forth. And so that was 193 pages of a dissertation cramped into